order the Thursday, February 26th Architectural Review Planning Board meeting. Rita, can you make a roll call, please?
Mr. Kent?
Here.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Acting Chairman Doherty?
Here. Thank you. Okay, are there any additions or withdrawals, deferrals, or arrangement of any agenda items?
I have none.
Actually, maybe I do not see any representative from Cudmore Builders here yet. Maybe we want to move, just a thought, move 6B to follow 7A.
Okay. Help me remember that when we get down there.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I guess the next regular meeting date is March 26th. I'll be here.
Yep, I'll be here.
Okay, I will be here too.
Yes, I will be here.
Okay, good. I guess we should move then to 6A, which is a request for extension of the effective period of approved application of the 555 Old School Road. Market Group is going to make a presentation.
You don't need to swear into it.
Yeah.
No, we don't have, but
We don't
we will,
have to.
just as a precaution. Swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Sorry.
I did.
Oh, if I could interrupt, I forgot to get an approval of the minutes. Is everyone have
yes,
the
yes.
minutes? And
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes, the draft minutes we've received for the meeting of Thursday, the January 22nd, 2015.
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Kent?
Aye.
Mrs. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Acting Chairman Doherty?
yes.
Good morning, Mark Marsh, Breeze Marsh for the record. I'm here, Tony from the Marker Group, who is actually the person that wrote the request. I just wanted to, on behalf of the Marker Group and Mr. and Mrs. Smith, explain in more detail, if necessary, why the delay. Tony's one of the top project managers for the Marker Group, and he has not been available. They've been very busy in Palm Beach and in Fort Lauderdale, and he's now been freed up to perform the job. However, it did exceed that 12-month limit, so the project is pretty well staying the same, and the request is just to have the previous approval be extended for another 12 months so we can perform the work.
Any discussion? Thoughts?
No comment.
I'm fine with that.
I do.
Well,
You should make a motion to.
Yeah. I'd like to make a motion to approve the request for an extension of the effective period of approved planning application for 555 Old School Road, agent of the Marker Group, and accept the revised site plan. Oh, sorry, that's it, isn't it?
For a period of how long?
For a period of the
1 year.
1 year.
I second.
Mr. Kent?
yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Acting Chairman Doherty?
Yes.
Thank you. Think that worked? You're out.
Nice
Thank
paper
you.
drive.
Very well.
It was wonderful how you all admitted that you didn't have time to do it and now have the resources to apply to it instead of just letting it drag out over
Yeah.
some extended period of time.
Had the previous project manager not gone off and had a baby, you may have had a little opportunity to.
Yeah, that's good luck with the project.
Hopefully the driveway, yes, so we're gonna do- it's gonna be 6A.
Okay. All right, so next on the agenda, folks from the 3250 Polo aren't here just yet, so we will move, I guess, to 7A, which is a continuation from the meeting on January 22nd, which was the discussion about the incentive floor area ratios, FARs 70-71C. And that was quite a discussion.
I'm not sure, I mean, just having
Small group.
limited group here, I don't know if I had prepared some items to discuss this. I know Mr. Marsh wanted to say some things as well, but I don't know if we should really do it.
I think you can begin your discussion today. You can certainly don't have to make a final decision, but at least you'll be further on down the road in your process if you put your ideas out today.
And I also thought there was some discussion about maybe getting a couple of architects to weigh in on the subject matter, because it's, in addition to Mark, I don't know if they'd be interested in that. There was some talk about doing that last week.
I think Mr. Jones had indicated he was gonna be here, but
Somebody's arriving. Not Mr. Jones.
But I do agree with you, it seems to be, if we had all of the group, it would be better.
I mean, I do have some things to say about it. I know
Sure.
Mr. Marsh has something to say about it.
Do you
as
think
well.
they'll be contentious and everyone else is going to dive in? No, I mean, I agree with Skip in some ways, but on the other hand, if what Hugh was saying, what's the response from Tom, Paul, Curtis? Whether it makes sense to.
I mean, we can say it. I can say it again next meeting too.
Okay.
Well, why don't you give us a preview?
Yeah.
Well, generally is, I went through, I prepared some notes on this, and but just the big picture scene is that the, and this is really speaking to step backs to the second floor, and really not to the second floor square footage, as a percentage of the first floor. I think that our current, regulations regarding that are, which I believe is 60%, I don't have it right here. 70% is completely within reason. It's really where that second floor area is placed. My big concern is that while our design manual spends a lot of time speaking to architectural style and design, I think that there's a lot of emphasis in the manual on setbacks, form, scale, and massing, but they're really overshadowed by the amount of discussion that we have about style and design. So my big concern for the town and future development of the town is that we have two-story massing that's too close to the property lines, and the community, the design manual is written specifically, and I quote from the book, the town's 5 single-family zoning districts, the development standards in this article respond to the unique characteristics of the town's 5 single-story zoning districts and address community concerns regarding the mass of new construction and its impact on the neighborhood character. And and that's in section 7066 generally. There are very specific parts of the design manual that refer to building form, specifically section 70-98. New structures should relate harmoniously to the form and scale of architectural vicinity, and in the preferred range are building forms with central massing, which I think is critical to to maintaining the feel of the town. The second thing is structures using rectangular configuration, and the third item is use of step backs. And I think especially building forms with central massing and use of step backs are critical to maintaining the feel of the town. I went out and did just on the main northwest thoroughfares, Gulfstream Road, Polo, and Polo. I went to every single intersection, I took photographs, and it's very interesting. You just do not see, all you see really is roofs. You see greenery and roofs, no houses sticking up, with the exception of one intersection, which is Lakeview and Gulfstream Road. And I think to have the rest of the intersections in town and in Plaza Soleil begin to look like that intersection will be significantly altering the character of the town. So that's how I feel. There are I just wanted to point out also section 70-100 of the code, which refers to roof and eave heights, specifically refers to, I'll read just so we have it all down here. The height and number eave lines and the overall height of the structure play an important role in establishing visual continuity with other structures on the street and maintaining an appropriate residential human scale. Most structures in the town are characterized by simple roof designs with low to medium eave heights and roof heights. This type of design emphasizes the horizontal dimension of the structure while minimizing the vertical dimension of the structure. And I think that's another piece that's key to this entire picture. Furthermore, section 70-237, building form. Most Gulfstream Bermuda styles, I'm abbreviating here, most Gulfstream style houses are one story and often exhibit a central peak flanked by peaks over projecting wings. Two-story houses should pay particular attention to reducing the size of the second floor and applying articulation such as balconies, setbacks, and other design techniques to avoid box-like massive buildings. It goes on to discuss step backs to, I paraphrase here, to reduce excessive bulkiness and provide a transition between first and second stories. Few critical step backs in a building are better than several minor step backs that only complicate the facade and create busy architecture. And under C is preferred balconies, simple rectangular configurations, single-story garages, smaller second-story configurations, and step backs to the second story. And I just think that for these are all things that we have to, keep in mind when we review future projects. And I do have two proposals. First of all, pertaining to setbacks. I think our setbacks for the town are certainly adequate. It's interesting that on interior lots, we are limited, you can't build to within past 15 feet from the property line, and the setbacks are 30% of the overall lot width, so which would be 15 and 15 on a 100-foot wide lot, and then extending from there. The second, and when we, in a corner lot, you can't build within 20 feet of the property line. So in other words, so no road can have the front setback's 30 feet, from the road on the side is 20 feet. And what I'm worried about is two-story houses being built within 20 feet of roadways, which really gives you a lot of vertical massing. Now, following the sections that I just recited, you can't actually build a two-story structure within 20 feet of the road just because it doesn't satisfy the design requirements of having step backs to minimize the impact of the second story. But if you just read the one part of the code which says you can build within 20 feet of the roadway, that would give an applicant the idea that you can build a two-story structure within 20 feet of the roadway. And I believe that the design manual doesn't actually allow that. So that's the first thing. The only thing that would be interesting is to examine perhaps pushing for larger lots, pushing the houses back more than 20 feet from the roadway. But that's a whole nother discussion. And then the second thing that I'd like to really discuss after doing an examination of the neighborhood is eave heights. And that is, we have preferred, discouraged, and prohibited ranges. And I think for all but the beachfront and Ocean West properties, our eave heights are too high. In other words, the eave heights that are in the discouraged range are really too high for the smaller lots that we have in the Plaza Soleil, Gulfstream Core, North, South districts. Presently, you're allowed to build to 21 feet for a two-story house. That's in the preferred range. The discouraged range allows you to go to 23 feet. I think 23 feet is too much for a small lot. And I think we should remove that and just put the maximum height of eave height for a house is 21 feet, which would allow for, roughly for a first floor, 12-foot ceiling on the inside of the house, on the first floor, and a 9-foot ceiling on the second house, depending on how thick the trusses are between the first and second story. But, 11 and 9, 12 and 9, that's certainly enough ceiling height inside the house, and would pull the houses down from 23 feet down to 21 feet, because right now, if somebody comes in with an application that's all, everything matches, and they have one item in the discourage range, you've height of 23 feet, there's nothing we can do about it.
Excuse me, before you go too far with that second point, that wasn't on the agenda for discussion today, I don't think, the eve height issue. I think we're talking about the step backs for the second floor and the amount of square footage. And I think it's a good point you raised, but I think it's something that the staff should put on the agenda for discussion at a future meeting. I think we should concentrate on the issue that Bill brought up at the last meeting about how a certain provision of the code was not working. The incentive provision of the code was not working and was creating situations which had not been anticipated before. And could you remind us, Bill, of the concern that you had about the language?
Well, the language is found in section 70-71, incentive floor areas, which allow the applicant or agent to very minimally do a step back that would allow them additional square footage. And the material articulation, it doesn't exist in this section, and this particular section was added with the idea that it would allow architects to be more creative and therefore freedom in their design. But in that, we also gave them an additional 5% in square footage. On two situations, this incentive seemed not to accomplish the articulation that the residents seem to want. Particular example is Lakeview and Gulfstream Road. That's quite visible and quite irritable, and that architect used, if I remember correctly, I'm not stating for sure, but he used the second story on the guest house or garage as his justification for incentive, and it had no bearing upon really the main structure, which is the concern. I believe the second story guest house was even on the southwest corner. I'm not certain of that, but anyway, it did not appear justified, and that there seems to be more interest in removing that incentive than allowing it to stay there. And I don't know if that answers your question, but that's about the
That
best.
answered mine, yeah. Because you're finding that they're taking advantage of it and building a lot more coverage
Right,
than they're entitled to because of some small articulation
yeah,
that they're using.
that's right. The code actually, the code is actually, without this incentive, flexible enough for what one might describe as a good architect. Allows them already to do their design and articulation in a manner that seems to be pleasing to the residents.
So your recommendation is to remove that incentive?
It is my recommendation, it definitely is my recommendation.
Which is reflected in Paul's letter as well.
Pardon me?
Which is reflected in Paul's letter, supported by Paul Lyons.
All lines.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
Paul Lyons, and I believe Marty Minor also
Yeah.
agrees, so,
Yeah.
you have, this really is, actually a subsection of what we're trying to discuss here. If it's a given that you recommend the removal of this, then you still have to have this discussion about the setbacks and the massiveness of some second-story buildings on corner lots.
Mhm. Would we make that, can we make that a separate?
I believe you could,
Yeah, I
yes.
think we need to reinforce that.
In fact,
Yes.
staff is recommending that you isolate that,
Yeah.
make a motion on it, and get rid of it today.
Okay, that's,
Mhm.
Let's do it.
Ask for a motion.
We have,
We'd like to have a motion.
Do we have input from the?
Mr. Chair, if I could, I do have to leave, but I just came here as a concerned design professional. I think, first of all, and I did speak with Hewlett at length about this, and I think, you know, his intention is definitely the right one, but how we get there is the question. I think I strongly object to any of this stepping back 5, 8 feet, whatever, random. I think we're gonna open a hornet's nest here, and it's not gonna produce what I think everybody's trying to get to here. Because that wedding cake is something I can just tell you from in Palm Beach, it's pretty well outlawed. It's called pop-up type architecture. In Ocean Ridge, it's highly discouraged. And I think it would be really remiss for this town to adopt anything like that. I think you're just opening another Pandora's box. I think you have to allow the design professionals to create the massing, which is obviously a huge concern to maintain the character of the town. That's why hopefully all the projects are done by architects and not just, you know, designers. I think the simple answer, and I'm going to pass it over to Skip because if I don't want to take his.
No, please take it.
If you're concerned about two-story, and we discussed this at length, or Hewlett and I did, the corner lots, which there are predominant a lot of corner lots here because of the small street, or the abnormally number of short streets in this town. I think the simplest thing, and it's, again, I just use Palm Beach because I've been working there so long, and they are one of the paramount communities about protecting their character and scale, is just to establish a setback for a two-story and build to that. You know, so if it's 25 on a street side instead of 20, so be it. Don't penalize the other setbacks. I mean, if somebody wants to build a two-story house, then, you know, I think the simple thing is to maybe just create a two-story setback requirement. I don't know if that solves, but it's the cleanest, and Skip can expound on this.
Well, what he's referring to is the setback on the ground, not the setback
Yeah,
for the second story
absolutely.
stepped back.
well, this is
Because
what I
it creates you mentioned this in your beginning of your remarks, is that you're concerned about the setbacks, but to require setbacks just for the second story does create an opportunity for a wedding cake design.
Right.
And a lot of communities discourage that.
Yeah.
I mean, people can implement it as long as the design is correct and it doesn't look like a pop-up. But what Palm Beach does is they, for instance, would have a 30-foot setback for if you're going to build a two-story house, and a 25-foot setback for a one-story house. And that's a very simple fix that would hopefully accomplish what you're looking for, but I'm not sure. If you like the articulation and you want to force articulation on second stories, then you want to go the route that you're talking about. But sometimes to force that on an architect creates a situation where it's a design
Yeah, I think
you're not looking for, and it also creates cookie cutter houses where every second floor is being required to set back.
in the middle, and yeah, I think, and there's something gracious about a two-story over and under. I mean, I presented a few here. It's very classical. It's along the theme, the Georgian colonial theme the town has. I understand the concern of the sheer wall effect, for lack of a term, but I think creating little step backs and what I call lean-tos is not a solution to that problem. So I think, you know, I think you should make it as simple. I think the other thing, remember, this board here is responsible or charged with aesthetic judgment, you know, hopefully as subjective as you can. But you know, you have the opportunity to critique if you feel discomfort. I don't know about Rich, but we deal with it. I was at ARPB yesterday, and they have neighborhoods that are all one-story or streets, and a person wants to put a two-story. It got deferred. It's because not only the ARPB didn't approve it, but the community. How many letters? We had like 8 letters from neighbors. So there is an opportunity there to negotiate. It's not like this is what it's going to be. So, and you know, not all towns have architectural review boards, but you still are charged with trying to direct an applicant or an architect and say, well, this just really doesn't fit our character or what we're looking for. I mean, you don't mandate it, but you can make suggestions. So I think you've got to just be fair. It's a thin line, and I'm totally against more legislation in terms of design. And you know, these little trick things of getting 5 feet and some incentives, I don't think that achieves much. It actually makes for more abuse or more distortion on what you're looking for. So those are basically my comments. I think the guidelines have been working. You know, I don't think it's broken. I don't agree with all of it, I'll admit, but you know, that's how you have to get sometimes creative to you know, work around it. So that's all I've got to say. Please don't do this step back, whatever you do.
Well, I think it's
It's already-
already in the code.
I know, I mean, well, abolish it or abandon it, whatever you want to do.
No, that's what we want to.
That's what we're going down the route towards.
Okay,
That's
please.
Good morning, thank you. My name is Richard Jones. I agree with Mr. Marsh and Mr. Randolph. You know, the forced articulation on all 4 elevations, or 3 out of the 4 elevations, where you want the additional 5-foot setback on the upper floor, certainly that in of itself is not consistent with the approved architectural styles in the town of Gulfstream. Gulfstream Bermuda style, Georgian style, Colonial West Indies. All of those styles are rooted in history, and there is a 200-year track record of those styles double stacking on at least the front elevation. So to require an additional 5-foot setback, even on the front elevation, would just take all of that architectural history and just carve it to pieces. So we feel very strongly about the not requiring an additional 5 feet on the elevations. Now, what was discussed and what Mr. Marsh talked about up in Palm Beach and Mr. Randolph about, and Delray is the same way. If you want a double stack, then provide an additional 5-foot setback and double stack. Mr. Kent, you talked about the corner lots with the house 20 feet from the street, but it's important to note that's 20 feet from the property line. Typically, the street is an additional, you know, 10 feet or so. And, you know, in conclusion, to be brief, I know it's not on the agenda, but the eave heights, you know, to do a quality home, you're going to want 8-foot doors upstairs and downstairs versus the 6-8 doors that you see here coming into the chambers here. And when you have 10-foot doors, you certainly need a little bit of breathing room above the doors for 8-foot doors, a little breathing room above the doors for crown molding and casings and so forth. So we find a 10-foot ceiling is a very acceptable and pleasing ceiling height with 8-foot doors. Now, if you go ahead and figure the structure that's required between floors, today it's a minimum of 24 inches, depending on how much mechanical equipment and lighting and coffered ceilings you'd like to incorporate into a design. So if you look at 10 and 10 and 2, well, you're already at 22 feet. So to limit an eave height to 21 feet is going to be a compromise in design on a second floor or a first floor. So, you know, for future, you know, we would say that if there is going to be a limitation for a maximum eave height for a 2-story house in the preferred category, or just this is the maximum you could achieve, then it should be at least 22 feet. And that's pretty much all I have to say, and I would strongly appreciate it if you can reconsider making the additional 5-foot second floor setbacks required.
So, just response, I forgot to mention the eave because I was kind of a co-author establishing the eave height. I agree with Mr. Jones, 10, 2, and 10 is the 22. The reason the eave height was to allow for overhangs, which again is part of the style that is synonymous with the town. So the idea was to not create like most towns, or I hate to keep mentioning Palm Beach, but it's 22 feet to the bearing point. But the reason for the extended, the eave reference was to allow or induce an overhang on the architecture. But it's still, I think we're very close. I don't think we need to be 24 feet of eave height, that's for sure. But I just want to point out that that's how that was established. So we're on the same page, but it's just to ensure more of an overhang, roof overhang, which is preferred. So.
Thank you.
No, it's not for discussion.
Yeah. I'd like to make a point when distinguishing between Palm Beach and Gulfstream. Gulfstream has a design manual, and it is very specific, and it was intended to give the architects objectivity, as opposed to having a board which has a lot of subjectivity. And some might claim that boards which don't have a design manual are left to the subjectivity of those who are reviewing the home. And so that's the dichotomy here, where you have a design manual where you have very specific criteria for the homes over and above what's in your zoning code. I know this is part of your zoning code, but it's part of your zoning regulations. See, Palm Beach just has zoning regulations and then an architectural review board that has criteria which says that basically that the home must be in harmony with the neighborhood, that it can't be excessively similar or excessively dissimilar to homes in the area, etc. It doesn't have specifics relating to eave heights and this sort of things. Those would be in your zoning regulations. So that's a little bit of there's actually quite a large distinction between the way in which this board works and the way in which other boards work. But that's not to say that you don't have the ability, if you don't think this articulation is working. What all Bill said was not working was the incentive, and his recommendation you've already passed and adopted. The question before you is whether or not this articulation that is already in the code relating to step backs on the second floor is something that you desire to maintain. And you've heard from two architects that they don't think that it's a good idea to do it because it forces articulation, and you couldn't, Volk and Meisner wouldn't be able to build houses here today the way they built them, because I guess most of the Volk houses were two-story stacked houses and not step back. So that's the issue for your discussion.
I just have one thing to say to that, is that the town, not along the ocean or Ocean West, or beachfront, Ocean West, that two-story stacked, John Volk, whoever you want to use, is perfectly appropriate for there. It fits in with the existing architecture. What I'm referring to is the core areas, the north-south district, Place Soleil. They're more two-story stacked in Place Soleil, but with significant setbacks. And that style, that stacked architecture, only exists on one home in one house in Gulfstream. And that's the reason two-story stacked houses are not in keeping with the architectural forms that already exist in the town. If we did two-story stacked, it would be going against everything save one house in Gulfstream. And that's why we have to have the articulation and the significant step backs, central massing to be in harmony. Let me finish, Mark.
I'm sorry.
Anything where we have two-story stacking toward the side lots would be completely unharmonious with the existing architecture, the existing architectural forms. I took pictures, I can show everybody. Every single house in Gulfstream, save one, is a pop-up. We are a wedding cake town, but it works because it keeps the massing, the two-story massing, in the center of the lot, so neighbors aren't looking at a two-story stacked house. Now, the exception there is the front. Your concern is having a front two-story stack. We allow, and that is predominant in the town, is a two-story stacked, 30-foot setback, center two-story portion. But having two stories all the way out on the sides, that's what the manual already says is not allowed, and it's in harmony with the existing architecture. That's my point.
Yeah, but the transformation from the 50s and 60s to current, and we spoke about this briefly more in real estate value, which is, you can't ignore the dirt, or the lots are so overpriced now that you have to come up with, again, creative ways to maximize the thing, but not at the sacrifice of the architecture, obviously, but there are other things. And when I started business here in '78, you talked about a two-story house and you're like, it's from a different planet. Everything was one story. You had to have one story because the average age here was, you know, a master bedroom had, things change, lifestyles change. So, you know, those are the pressures we feel.
Yeah, I understand that, but
I think so, you know, it's not fair to just say there's only one two-story or a couple of two-stories. I think you're going to get
no, one story, two-story stacked.
Stacked, yeah.
Every other
But it
two-story.
depends on the style. And as I said yesterday, like the colonial British West Indies, which I come from, is an additive style. You start with a stacked centerpiece, and then over time you add on wings, and that's what gives it interest. But you have to have the lot. So it's a little bit tricky. But I think if we can get a setback that's reasonable for a two-story, and an applicant or an owner can then adhere to a simple penalty, whether it's 5 feet additional setback, I think with mitigating circumstance of landscaping, I don't think it's going to be as bad as you may be painting. Anyway, I apologize, I do have to run. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
If I could just say one more thing also. Currently in the code, I mentioned about the additional 5-foot setback for minimizing the mass. Isn't that only on?
No, that doesn't have anything to do with this. It doesn't actually state 5 feet in the sections that I'm talking about, central massing and things like that. This is only for the, what we're talking about eliminating.
What is your question?
Well, I've heard this morning that there's already in our code currently an additional 5-foot setback, you know, second floor, or maybe not 5 feet, but a second floor step back. I believe, is that in 70, 71?
You got me, I don't know.
But isn't it just on elevations that face a right of way or a public right of way? You can either do an additional second floor setback or provide a balcony of 24 square feet or provide a porch of 8 feet deep.
Those are suggested options for articulation.
Right, right. But currently, there's not currently in the code something that states
It's not a
second floors.
mandated
No.
5-foot step
Okay.
back. Is that what you're asking?
Right.
No.
No,
There's
there's
nothing,
nothing,
okay.
no.
And again, the 5, and going back to what Mark said, you know, the additional 5 feet setback, and I see it in other towns, it's, okay, if you want a wedding cake, you can be at 12, but if you want a double stack, you're at 17 on the sides. Or if you want to be 15 in the rear, but if you want to be double stacked in the rear, it's 20. And I could see that being something that could work, you know, very well in the code, because you can provide additional landscaping in that 5 feet and so forth. But that, again, that front elevation is kind of a sacred elevation. It's usually the only elevation that's seen on a house from the street, unless you're a corner lot.
And we have nothing against a two-story stack front elevation.
Right. Okay.
That's where we're totally, that is in harmony with the existing architecture. That is typical. Some houses are broken up with a second-story balcony, but you can have a two-story vertical structure in the town, and that's perfectly within.
And then I think, you know, giving the architects the option of 5 foot for the wedding cake on the sides, which, you know, does lead to some pleasing architecture, or the double stack with the additional 5 feet total, would be a good alternative for, so that we don't end up with all the houses looking pinched in 5 feet on the second floor. So.
Yeah, there's nothing right now in the code about
Okay.
pinching in from the 5 feet, there is no. there's
Well, I
nothing in
thought I
the-
saw the memorandum from Marty at the very last page of today's agenda that talked about additional 5-foot setbacks on, proposing additional
That's
5-foot setbacks on
That's a suggestion. Yeah.
It's a
suggestion.
suggestion,
Okay.
yeah.
And that's what we're discussing, I would assume,
Yeah.
in this meeting. Okay. Thank you.
General comment.
Yeah.
Miss, did you want to?
No.
Um, It sounds as though we don't have that much, if any, wrong with our code. And that our emphasis is being based upon a single home. And that has caused a great deal of concern and question, how could that happen? I get that a lot.
That's it, yeah, this is a.
It has to be,
Understatement.
has to be my fault, I know. But I'm wondering now if, had we required a different landscape design on the side, if we would not be in this discussion. So that it was not as visible, having different layered heights of architect on that street side. My feeling is that a well-designed or defined landscape plan on the side street elevation could have absorbed a lot of the complaints. And typically, and the reason I say that is because when you are under construction and there's no landscape there, I get calls like crazy. This thing is just right up against the road, and it must be off. And then when the landscaping goes in, oh, that looks okay. I don't see any problem. So, did we err on the landscape plan on the side road elevation? That is a question that's in my mind at this point in time.
Can I make a comment to that? That corner has a huge tree.
Right.
Trunk that must be, what, 6 feet in diameter,
Yeah.
and it's a very tall tree, so I
Striking.
must say most of the foliage is up above the house. But right now, the hedge is growing considerably.
Yeah.
It must be 8 feet, 9 feet at least, and still there's the house.
Well, that's
Oh,
why I
you're
said
right.
layered, different types of layered height landscape.
It's just, I mean, this is just my opinion, but I think that probably where we went a little off is that and on that particular house, there's no central massing, and that's the reason that it is that way. It is 2 stories right up, and that's just, I just think Form 7098, Section 7098 has to be used in the future to define if that second story has been, right now there's 2 stories. The 2-story section of the house is right up as close to the corner as you can get. And there is actually 1 story on the west side, and the second story has been shifted over so that the house across the street is a perfect example. It's a large house, but it has the articulation. That's the perfect dichotomy right there. The house on the south side of the street has this massive ceiling. The house on the north side of the street is also a large house, 2 stories, but it has single-story wings on either side. And even Mark alluded, he said this British colonial style has a large central 2-story structure, then with smaller 2-story structures on the side. But as he pointed out, we don't have lots that are large enough to accommodate the first stories on the side. So therefore, we can't do the large 2-story section with the smaller, except on certain lots. And I think that the house across the street from the house we're talking about was a perfect execution. We have central massing as per Section 7098, and I think that works. So
Tell
that's-
me, excuse me,
that's okay.
let's go to section 7098. Tell me where in there would prohibit or require central massing.
Well, 2 items. First of all, preferred is building forms with central massing, And the second one is new structures should relate harmoniously to the form and scale of architecture in the vicinity. And I feel that the form and architecture of the houses in that vicinity are two-story central massing. There's only one house that's an exception, and it has columns in the front. It was built way before the design manual, but it does have two-story stack on the sides. It has two-story stack on the sides, but the setbacks, there must be 50-foot setback from the north side of the property line, and it must be at least 35 feet from the south side of the property line. So it's mitigated by the fact that the house, even though it is a two-story like this, has significant setbacks. So you don't have 15 feet of wall straight up. And that's just, but it's really the house, I mean, to your question though, I think it's not harmonious with the other two-story houses in the neighborhood. And I think that the house across the street, which is a fairly new build, 10, 12 years, is a perfect example of a well-executed two-story house in the core.
So you're saying what you think we have in place now works?
I think it works.
Without adding any?
I think what Bill said about eliminating the special exception to have the
Incentive program.
the incentive program, I think that we should do away with that. I think that's unanimous.
We did that, didn't we?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Right.
that-
We
but-
did.
It's a recommendation to the
But-
committee.
Right.
But I just didn't know, I mean, we're talking, I mean, you know, the 5-foot second story setbacks has come up, but I don't think that really applies. I don't think what we're looking for. I think the code says significant setbacks. It doesn't say 5 feet, it says significant. And that's why, I mean, I don't know what everybody thinks, and Bill, how you feel about this, Rita, but it almost seems as though we should I can do a photographic survey of all the houses, or we can do an actual survey where we drive around town, maybe just take the north-south corridors just to examine what is out there, because unfortunately, what the architects all say, well, wedding cake and pop-up,
In the
all these,
derogatory.
in a derogatory, but that is Gulfstream, that is what we have central massing, and it gives the neighborhood, the neighbors, with 15-foot setbacks, somebody's not looking out of their yard at a second-story window looking down on them. It gives incredible privacy.
So you were saying you're okay with the code as written?
Yeah, I just didn't know if it needs to be
I don't have any problem with
strengthened.
that either.
Yeah.
I don't either.
Okay.
So do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I came in late, I apologize. Do I have to be sworn in to speak?
Yeah, I think.
No.
Oh, I thought this was in relation.
No, I've been listening to part of this testimony, Mr. Kemp, and I've reviewed the agenda for the meeting and the outlines that were prepared by Marty, who's here.
Can you state your name for the record?
Tom McDonough, Seaside Builders. And also there was a letter, I think, from
Mr. Lyons?
Chairman Lyons, Paul Lyons.
Paul Lyons, which I think that he I think was in agreement with what you just discussed in terms of not necessarily wanting anything changed. Just for clarification purposes, because some of the board members may know or may not know that we have a substantial investment in this community. We own 11 lots in Gulfstream. 8 of them are sold. We did the Spence property. All of those 6 homes are sold. We're going to be building on Polo Drive 2 houses. We're going to be presenting a project on Oleander in the next week. I think that you'll be satisfied with, because I think it'll certainly conform to the things that you like to see. Just for clarification for my benefit, the ordinance or the land development regulation that you have eliminated was relative to the bonus space only. Is that correct, Mr. Thrasher?
That's what they're recommending, that's correct.
Okay. They're recommending to the city commission, to the
That's
town
correct.
commission. Okay, and you're recommending that the remainder of the ordinance stays the same?
I don't know, they got to that, there seems like there is discussion,
You,
comments
well, I
to
mean,
that.
we've been able to work within the parameters of what exists presently. I think that certain, and Mark Nosh was here earlier, I don't know what he had to say, but certain things, if they change from an architectural standpoint, could create structural issues. I think that we can all live within the intent of the guideline that we have right now, if that's what the desire is. But you brought up an excellent point. Landscaping, and you comment, Mr. Kent, about the house in the corner and the massing of the landscaping, the vertical, the second story going up in one plane. But, you know, landscaping basically solves a lot of problems with these houses. And to your point, when I started the Spence property, I got calls every day from the neighbors. We can see the house, we can see this, we can see that. And now, you know, I get, you know, favorable comments about the amount of vegetation that's gone into the property. So it's a difficult situation. I mean, you can't build houses without tearing down all the landscaping and then rebuilding it and putting the landscaping which goes in last. So people react. But, you know, my desire, if it means anything of what it's worth, would be to keep the guidelines as they are. The bonus space doesn't really affect anything that I'm doing. I don't think Rich does it.
No.
The elimination of the bonus space and the houses that we're building on the corner of Polo Drive. I've explained that to the potential homeowners, and they didn't have a problem with that. We put a deed restriction on the property so that we could build two houses and no one can combine them in the future. So I just wanted to make a point that we do everything we can to try to live within the guidelines that you've set forth in the town. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you.
No other comment?
Okay. A little thoroughly confused on where we're at. Make a note on this, Mr. Malcolm.
Yes, I have that down.
Okay, great. I think we should move on then, finally to considering the site plan for 3250 Polo, requesting approval to add a second driveway entrance and to revise the previously approved landscape plan by Cudmore Builders. Well, who will be, anyone presenting on
We
behalf
have
of Cudmore?
Mr. Cudmore here, I don't know if he's the presenter.
Yeah, I don't, somebody needs to present and tell us about the plan, so.
Excuse me, is he?
Is Randy gonna present or?
I don't know you guys. We can do it.
Yeah.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
So, I guess you have the plans in front of you. The original submittal, I don't know if you have that, only had the driveway being entered by the front door, and you drove all the way around to the garage.
Right.
It was very impractical. It just doesn't seem to work very well. Anyway, so what you have in front of you is the driveway being connected to the street, basically exactly as it was on the previous owners, the previous site.
Right. Any comments or discussion?
I would just like,
Okay.
sorry, I'd like to ask about the connection between the new drive you propose to add and the existing, your original plan. There seems to still be a bit of a link. Is that across?
There sure is. It's going to be used more of a walking path. It's going to be stepping stones. I think they're 6 feet wide by 2 feet. You can see them on the plan.
Is that stepping stones with grass in between?
Yes, with grass in between.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess we
Yeah,
can make some
yeah,
comments
we did.
or ask for some guidance here.
Mhm.
The, what you're here today for is, one, to approve the amended site plan, and two, approve the revised landscaping plan. I have no comments in regards to the landscaping plan. I think it's fine. There is another portion on here that would require commission approval, and I'll try to identify that. But before I do that, I would like to remind you that the commission generally likes to hear, I mean, almost always likes to hear your comments as it relates to something that they may be making a final decision on. So I'd like to incorporate that discussion or incorporate that aspect of this site plan for your comments and consideration. And I would focus on the proposed site plan amendment in regards to the front of the house. And what you have, or what is being proposed, is an exfiltration system, two of them. And some people refer that commonly as a French drain. It's a gravel consideration or configuration, construction. What's going on is that half of the exfiltration system is on private property and another half is on public property in our right-of-way. Now, this lot has had a lot of drainage problems, and previously there was a swell on the property, private property, that worked as good as it could. It's not the same as a positive outfall through a drainage pipe going to the intercoastal. The town has also regraded the portion of the roadway from the corner property line north about 50 to 75 foot to help get the water to flow a little bit to the north to an outfall. But my concern is that if this exfiltration system is allowed to be constructed in the right-of-way, it's possible that somehow the town could be responsible for the maintenance. And on an exfiltration system, to my knowledge, there's not a good way to determine whether a exfiltration system is functioning or is malfunctioning. And residents could start calling the town and complaining about the collection of water, because there is a system in the right-of-way. The town will have to try to seek cooperation only from the landowner, property owner. Now, this reconfiguration also, as proposed, eliminates a previously approved and presented retention area in this same area, if I am correct. They have, in this proposed site plan, basically eliminated a small swale which could help in the event of a say a 3-year storm. This drainage plan that we asked for meets, in my opinion, the current drainage requirements, drainage plan for the town of Gulfstream, excluding the exfiltration system. So they have accomplished that, the code requirement, on their own property. This is an auxiliary option that Mr. Cudmore feels is in the best interest of the town and the owner. I would also mention that in the event of a 100-year rain event, there is no system, exfiltration, retention, even positive outfall in our town that is going to eliminate water standing in the roadway. I don't know if I'm making that point clear. So, 100-year event, Gulfstream has water, and I'll walk through it up to my hip bone. So, for a period of time. So, the options that I believe are available, or that I can think of, is one, you do not allow this site plan. You do not agree or allow that any portion of the exfiltration system, the rock system, to be placed in the right-of-way. That is one option. The other option is if you allow it, you make a specific requirement of periodic maintenance, some kind of a recorded document that places the burden of maintenance minimally in frequencies and or as needed as part of the legal documents to this property. My recommendation to Mr. Cudmore was to move the exfiltration system, whatever design that may be, entirely onto private property. His engineers do not believe that's a functional alternative. But I still am in the position, as I think I spoke to Mr. Cudmore, that this exfiltration system, if approved in this site plan, should exist exclusively on private property. Rita, have I hit the points and explained it well enough?
I believe so.
Okay. So it's a legal situation we're dealing with here in regards to this, and also general comment to that, in my knowledge, to my knowledge, there is not such a system like this in public right of way. This would set a precedent and create possible future maintenance costs for the town that never have we budgeted for before. With that, Mr. Cudmore may like to...
Okay, if I may then for just a moment. The exfiltration system is really made up of a series of pipes and that will hold some water for a period of time, let it percolate into the soil. And that system is actually not the portion that's in the swale. That is up against the house. All we're doing in the swale is a bed of rock. So the alternative is I put dirt there, as it is now, and it doesn't work, or I put the rocks with some cloth that I believe is going to be better than the dirt or what is there now. That's all I'm trying to do. I could move it back, but the concern is if you walk by 3250 Polo, there's always water there. So I think it would be somewhat silly to say, yes, you can put dirt there, but you can't put rock and revetment cloth. I mean, all we're trying to do is make a bad situation better, and I could move it back, but the problem is in the swale. It's not on the property, so it doesn't do any good. I mean, none of this is required. I could do nothing, but I just think it's in the best interest of the homeowner, the town, and everyone, and I don't really believe that there is maintenance to the portion in the front. There could be maintenance to the exfiltration field that is on the property, up against the house.
But they have that responsibility.
But that's their responsibility. I don't believe that there's anything as far as maintenance, and I don't, anywhere else in the town, I'm not sure that anyone knows what's in the swales. Is it all dirt, or if it was rock? It maybe when everything was done initially, there had been some thought, and we had done some sort of French drain. It's not a wonderful system, but it's better than dirt. So that's why we're proposing this system.
And it's predominantly rock in this...
It is. All it is
yeah.
It's 6 feet wide, 2 feet deep, filled with rock that allows the water to go down through it. There's cloth to try and keep the water filtered as best you can, but it's tough. And so half of it is on the Clark's property, and half because of the way the...
How wide is this? 10 feet wide?
It's 6 feet wide.
6 feet, so 3 and 3?
3 and 3.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a very good section on your drawing showing what it is. Yeah, this was proposed by Chad Gruber, who is, I think,
So right now there's a, in the old drawings, here's the swale area, it's right there.
You don't have that?
No, I did not get a copy.
And so this would be, so here's the line, this was the.
Well, let me just say that the ultimate decision in regard to whether the town wishes to use its right-of-way for this purpose is with the town commission. And, you're here to review the plans, the site plan. If you have a comment in regard to it, it's fine, but the ultimate decision will be with the town commission as to whether or not they're gonna allow town right-of-way to be used for this purpose. When I first looked at this bill, I thought it was more like a French drain or something as opposed to just gravel being placed in the... I think, town commission may ultimately want to have its engineer look at it, and if this is an offer by a property owner to improve the flooding at the swale, perhaps it's something that the town can accept, and it may wish to impose conditions, but, I think at the very least, you should have your engineer confirm that it would be an advantageous situation for the town.
Well, we will do that.
Okay,
The idea was that we wanted to get the ball rolling,
Right.
Quickly for the owner and
Because of the construction process,
and
We're
because
getting
they are
close.
at that phase.
it's critical right now.
So
So,
he meets the town code relating to maintaining the sufficient amount of rainfall on site.
that is correct,
So this is an addition.
An improvement,
yes.
in my view, yes.
Right, but, and by putting you say that he had a retention area that is no longer available because of the driveway, but that retention area wasn't necessary to meet the drainage requirement.
I would suspect that they have modified the proposed retention areas to the size necessary to meet the
Correct.
1 inch of runoff.
Okay.
Well, I think this is a good thing, and I like what I'm hearing about making an improvement. Drainage in this town is a mess. It's ridiculous. We're always fighting it. If you're telling me that this is something that's, you know, proven, and we're gonna get an opinion from our town's engineers that it would.
it's going to be better, excuse me, but we still have the issue of the water table, the
Yeah, I
amount
understand.
of rain, all that.
Right, right, right.
I'm not gonna say that you're not gonna go by there and
Right.
see any, we're just trying to do everything we can at this
Of course.
stage.
Right.
Uh,
And you've got an owner that wants a beautiful home and doesn't wanna see, to the extent we can do it,
Oh,
let's
believe
do
me.
what we can. So I'm in favor of that as long as,
Yeah,
get
I
that.
guess, well, the one thing that I'm concerned about is the part where the town maintaining and having a covenant against the
I don't-
property or whatever,
I don't think that's
periodic
wise.
maintenance, and I'm
I agree with
completely
that.
against that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think we could get an agreement out of the owner to take on that responsibility.
Why not?
Did you speak with the owner about this issue? or
I did
he
speak to him
mentioned-
about it, and he did want to, as opposed to moving it back onto the property, he just said to me, Terry, we're sort of losing half the effectiveness, but it's tough. I don't want him to start getting phone calls when people see standing water there, because there is going to be standing water. I can't work miracles with this. All we're doing is the best we can. So it's going to be somewhat subjective. What is maintenance to
That's my
to
problem.
gravel? There is,
That's
Right,
why I
right,
don't wanna get
right.
involved
It's-
with subjective determination that there's a problem there.
right.
I will speak my voice on that
Yeah.
forever.
But who says what is the proper way to
Exactly,
treat a
and so-
swale?
Right.
You have to put, nothing says you have to have dirt and then sod on top. If I have gravel, then dirt, then sod, no one ever knows, but there isn't any maintenance involved. It was done, it's done. Yeah,
I
I
guess
think
the
you just-
ultimate question for the commission is adding this additional driveway making the situation worse?
Yeah,
Ooh,
Can I say, I think that the applicant is perfectly within his bounds to put in the second driveway, so I don't think we can limit him on that, in that respect. And I think that if the applicant also meets the 1 inch runoff requirement, which is the up till now current standard, or the up to now standard, I think, you know, it's really, it's sort of a goodwill thing. The builder wants to, and the developer wants to satisfy the town that there's not going to be water there, but I don't think it's incumbent on him to fix a situation that exists. In other words, if he's meeting the requirements of the minimum standards that the town sets forth, now tell me if he's not meeting the minimum requirements, then I think we have an issue, but otherwise, I think that his desire to mitigate the standing water situation there, and I don't think putting the second driveway in is going to, I mean, obviously we lose a little bit of swale area there by putting the second driveway in, but I think that it would be putting undue, to not let the second driveway go in would be against what we allow people to do. And I don't think, and I just don't think that encumbering the
Is that
property.
true? We always allow second access ways?
no, I couldn't allow, I mean, I don't have the authority to approve such a thing. It's always, if there is, and it's a level 2 or 3, it's approved by the commission, the ARPB.
Yeah, I mean, we're allowed to do it.
I would never
You
approve
said
this.
that they're entitled to it, and I'm not sure that
Well,
they
they're allowed
are
to have
entitled
it.
to it. They have to go through
Yeah,
Well,
this procedure and
yeah.
show that there's no
Okay.
adverse effects on the town in doing it.
That's
Okay,
right.
And if the commission ultimately feels that there's an adverse effect on the town by having this second driveway cut, then I think they've got the ability to deny it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the question today then is just whether or not I can put the gravel in the swale, which is half homeowner's property and half town property. And I guess that's the question, and Billy, you're saying that really it would be the commission that needs to.
Yeah, and that's why
Yeah.
I led with the comment,
Mhm.
at least I tried to, that typically on issues that are ultimately decided by the town commission, the town commission likes to hear from their recommending
Right,
body.
okay.
And so, in other words, it could have happened, no comment about this at this level,
Mhm.
take to the commission say, I wanna hear one from the
Got it.
ARPB. That has happened.
Mhm.
So procedurally and historically, they wanna know what
Right.
this board believes is
Because
the
I
right
think
decision.
The Clarks would like to go forward with whatever needs to be done, be it the commission approval. It's just that I am concerned, when I spoke to Kevin, that I don't know, to me, there is no maintenance to this system. It's just, again, gravel with revetment cloth, and I don't know what sort of agreement he would sign. Just because there's standing water, he's not gonna redo this, because there is still gonna be standing water there, I believe.
Oh, there will be.
Right.
But I think your consideration or possible recommendation would be to have the town manager provide this information to its engineer for opinion, conversation, and possible recommendation. And that may solve, or at least at this point in time, pass all the.
Yeah, I spoke to Chad Gruber yesterday, and he was willing to call and speak to the town engineer, just to make sure that everybody was in agreement that this was as best as we could.
I would like it in writing, that's all, from our engineer.
Yeah, that would be good.
Well, do we want to have a motion to recommend?
Comment from the public?
Yes, please.
Tony Graziano, 3259 Polo. If I can start with a snide comment, we were wondering when they were going to wake up to the drainage problem in the driveway. Finally, they're going to do it. I agree with you. I doubt that it will perfectly fix it, but at least you won't have to drive through 6 inches of water every time we have heavy rain. I don't think French drains last forever. They do eventually fill up. So the question that Mr. Thrasher had is, when it fills up and you get 6 inches of water again, is the town responsible for rebuilding it, or is the owner going to redo it? I think that's a valid one for you to work out. My real reason for being here, though, is out of frustration to have an opportunity to complain again. We have started the 17th month of construction at 3250. I live directly across the street. For 17 months, I've been awakened 3 or 4 mornings a week when they start work early. I understand the town is trying to work on an ordinance that will fix that, but Mr. Cudmore's subs serially violate the restrictions on the hours of work, and even sometimes the days of work. 6:45 this morning, I was awakened by the first truck showing up. 6:45. How many of you people would put up with being awakened for 17 months early? I really wish the town would do something to stop this. Thank you.
Request compensation.
Thank
You want me to comment on that?
Yeah, you might.
Just to follow up, it has been a problem, and we have recently adopted a new ordinance, placed some additional restrictions upon the general contractor. Unfortunately, this was initiated prior to any specific enforcement that could be placed upon Mr. Cudmore. Going forward, we believe that we have a better control and we have enforcement ability. and including tickets and violations, and to the point of stopping the job. Each general contractor will be required to sign the agreement of responsibility to this very thing that I briefly mentioned. And it will be a document that will allow us to fine, ticket, or stop work.
Bill, are you saying that this project would be grandfathered and that that provision doesn't apply to this? It seems to me that if you have a provision relating to when people can begin work and not, that it should apply to this property. I don't know why subs should continue to come in at 6:45 in the morning.
Okay, now, you're the attorney, so I'll just say that,
Well, why don't we ask the
The-
contractor? Why, I mean, is there any reason these folks have to come in at 6:45 in the morning?
No, I mean, I don't know what happened today, but I've had a fence, I thought a fairly good looking fence put up on this property since the day we started. I had signage made up very clear, no one can start before 8, have to be up by 5. I have a full-time supervisor, Mark, on this job. I have an assistant in case he's not there. The property is always locked until 8 o'clock. I'm not gonna tell you that a truck doesn't pull up or whatever, but in my experience, if I'm there at 10 to 8 or 7:45, the police are there right behind me to make sure we can. So I'm not sure the extent or who was there, but I don't have people working there prior to 8 o'clock in the morning, do I?
Yes. I'm the guy who lives there.
I live around the corner, and this has been an issue since we started. I thought I've done my best. I apologize if trucks are, there are certain delivery trucks that might leave a yard somewhere. They get there, they can't get in, the property's locked. There's a gate, there's a lock on that fence.
Mr. Cudmore, when an 18-wheeler pulls up 50 feet from my bedroom and starts backing up with the beep, 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 it doesn't do any good that the gate is locked.
I understand, but again, he's not getting into the property, and we're not there until 8 o'clock. So, I mean, I believe I did see a truck there this morning. It was a landscaping truck, I believe. I'm not sure why they were there. I mean, I schedule everything as best I can. We supervise our work. Again, full-time supervision on that job since day one. So I'm trying my hardest, and the site has been kept clean. There's never been any debris or anything on that site. I get comments from other neighbors that they're happy with what's going on as far as the timeline.
Well, you're willing to tell these subs that they should not bring their trucks in prior to 8 o'clock?
There's signage very clear. If my guy isn't there by 8 o'clock, I mean, it's clear. No one is allowed on that site till 8 o'clock.
well,
So, but
Mr.
again,
Graziano is making the statement that a semi-truck is on the roadway and positioning themselves for 8 o'clock work, and in that process, particularly with the backing signal, it's very disruptive to his family.
I understand.
I'm not sure we have the ability to,
I think you've got the ability to tell the contractor to make sure that these folks don't show up for deliveries prior to 8 o'clock.
and
I put together a letter when we started this.
Yeah.
I sent it to every sub under my control, but again, the landscaper, who was a subcontractor, then called somebody up in Ocala about a delivery of trees. They left at 4 in the morning. Yes, they got here, I guess, this morning at 7 o'clock. Did they know the rule? Maybe not, but they didn't do anything. They pulled up. I mean, the police or anyone, if I had been there, I would have asked them to leave. I try and go by the job myself. I leave around at 7:30 every morning just to make sure nobody's there.
Excuse me, Mr. Cudmore, the landscaper, I believe, was the second truck this morning. The 6:45 was somebody else who got inside the gates. The landscaper came later because the police had already chased the first guy.
They got inside the locked gates?
Well, because of the way the construction is now, the gates haven't opened before 8 o'clock because I think they give out keys to some of the subs so that they get themselves in. But this morning at 6:45, somebody backed in the driveway. The landscaper was later. It was almost 8 o'clock. It was perhaps 10 minutes of 8 when he arrived. I've never complained if somebody shows up 10 minutes of 8, but 6:45 was a bit much.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I have no idea what somebody's doing there at 6:45. And right now, we are in the process of landscaping. I don't know if you can see, but the trees are in the front. We have taken down the fence. It has gotten more difficult. But again, Mark is there at 7:45 every morning, just to make sure that nobody's working there. But things slip through the cracks. I'm just telling you that I'm really trying to cooperate. I'm trying to be a good neighbor. I work with other neighbors and we're replacing sod and doing what we can in the neighborhood. So
In the future, Mr. Cudmore, on other developments, you will be required to sign this site development traffic regulation plan that makes you solely responsible for such activities, even whether it's your fault or not. So I'm not sure how that's gonna go, but that's the agreement going forward that every developer now will be signing.
right.
And our avenue of control, you might say, will be via the contractors, subcontractors with ticketing and possible shutdown of the job. All by ordinance.
Right. I'm used to it. We work in many communities where you have these rules, and yes, there are fines for people working before 8, fines for people working after 5, and we really, I try my best.
I have spoken with you and I think Mark on multiple occasions and via the concerns of the residents that have been voiced to me, and I too have done my best to try to get control of that area. Just unfortunately is not satisfactory, and we've gone to this future step.
Okay,
Thank you for.
thank you. So you're saying the commission wants to hear our views on the right-of-way issue?
No, the issue before you today is the site plan to allow the driveway as one, and then the landscaping as 2. The discussion you've had has taken place. If you were to have a motion to approve the site plan to allow the additional driveway, I would suggest you add the condition that the town manager have the engineer look at it and report the findings back to the town commission in regard to same.
That's good.
We have a motion?
Is that gonna hold the project up in any meaningful way?
I don't believe so. No.
It'll be something that's.
We have till March 10th or 8th.
And then what, is there any chance?
13th.
13th.
Oh, 13. Is there any chance that this drainage system, in other words, the keep it in its entirety, but move it fully onto the property? Is there any way I may move the swale back a little bit? Is that?
Not really. If you were to look, that's that right of way
Right.
is where the problem is.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree with
You
that.
don't agree with
but
that?
Okay,
Okay.
I think there is a possibility it could
Well,
be done with some
I could move it-
modification to the site.
Yeah, I could move it 3 feet. It just, in my mind, won't be as effective. I'm trying to do the best we can, and if there's a way to get it approved as it's drawn, I think it's better than moving it. And
So
I
with
don't
that
think,
statement, I would recommend that you not allow it in the right of way.
Yeah.
So move it back 3 feet
Yes.
on the drawing.
Does it affect, is it a non-load bearing, is this drainage system with the P-rock and, or whatever it is in the mesh, can that not go under a driveway?
can it not go under?
No.
Can the driveway go over?
Purpose is for it to absorb the
It-
rain.
yeah,
It won't do
it-
any good under
yeah.
structure.
Well, but that way you have more underground space for it to travel out, a larger area, larger volume underneath the thing, but so if it moved 3 feet, it would just be touching the edge of the driveway.
Or,
We're talking about sort of moving 3 feet back on the property.
Onto the property.
Yeah, it doesn't really affect the driveway at all.
And the swale area, in other words, the swale area would start at the interface of the pavement and the
that's right, that could be done.
so,
In fact, that's what we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And throughout the community. We are a swell community rather than curb and gutter,
the curb gutter, yeah.
as it relates to NPDS.
Mhm.
And then you're
Federal
saying the
clean.
town itself, if it chose to do so at that intersection, could add its own,
That's right.
yeah, without relying upon the property owner.
Right, but it would mean digging up everybody's swales and sprinklers and things.
not the solution that I would recommend.
And why doesn't it go all the way down? I mean, right now, why doesn't it continue all the way down to the new driveway entrance? You don't have a plan, do you?
Why isn't
Oh,
it longer? Why isn't it longer? Is that,
You know, there may not be any reason that it couldn't be bigger, but again, this was presented by Chad Gruber, who's really, I've done a lot of very difficult drainage systems with me, especially in Ocean Ridge. I lived on Coconut, that was at elevation 3, and in a home that we did a very similar system to this and cleaned up that street and worked beautifully on the 3 homes we built. So it was, again, this is not required, it was just what we were proposing to try and take care of the problem.
I think, yeah, I think what we're hearing is that we just don't wanna have it in the
Right.
town, into the town's property, that's.
Okay.
That is my recommendation.
Again, so you're opting to have dirt instead of rock in the
We'll
town
have-
property, which,
We'll have
It's
dirt
fine.
and then have the swale, and then have this,
right,
contained under the swale on the property,
Correct,
and that's what you're,
yes. However you work it out.
and I don't know why it wouldn't be, you know, go another 6 feet further north, just to
yeah,
be
perhaps
a
I
little
could
bit larger, you know.
So your motion would be to approve the site plan for the additional driveway conditioned upon the exfiltration system being contained on his own property. That would be your motion?
What, and if that's satisfactory with,
That would be my recommendation.
I'm
He's
thinking
the
just
chair,
go
so
through.
somebody else needs to make.
Yeah, I'm the chair, I can't.
no, I don't know if you, but are you okay with that?
Yeah.
You know, I actually, since I'm new to this thing, I don't understand why they're so afraid of putting 3 feet under the right of way and what the responsibility is. I'm just hearing that this is, I'm thinking logically, it's just a bunch of rocks. I get it, I'm a golfer, we deal with drainage all the time, and these things are helpful, but I guess there's a legal liability, and I'm a common sense person. It's 3 feet in the right of way, it's gonna be underneath a couple feet of dirt, nobody will even know it's there. If it helps the customer, the gentleman, Mr. Graziano across the street. So my feeling is, I understand pushing it back on the property relieves all sorts of town responsibility and maintenance and all that, and I kinda get that, and I totally get it. But I'm voicing my opinion, that just
Yeah,
common
no, that's-
sense, I just think, my goodness, it's feet under the ground, it's.
Since you referenced Mr. Graziano, I would also like to mention that presently there is no swell established because they are using it for parking and construction. It's impossible to get water off the road if it's an impervious area or even pervious. That location, we built a swell there for Mr. Sip. I know what we did. And it immediately made a positive difference. Without a swell, which is what is required of us for NPDS, without a swell, which doesn't exist there during construction, it will flood that street. Absolutely no question about it.
Without a swell.
I put rock,
Yes.
yeah, I
What
put
we're
rock
talking
across
about
the front of that
Is a swell
property.
of a type larger than what the town built for Mr. Sitt. It will be better than what we built. It will not be ideal. You will not be able to build anything that will be ideal,
I understand.
even with
I get that.
with an outfall through that property. It won't happen. I've walked through enough water in this town to know it won't happen in a 100-year storm event.
About 100 years, but yeah.
Yeah, 3 year, it'll go down in an hour.
Well, I mean, we're saying.
So anyway, I was just voicing
Yeah,
the opinion
yeah.
that I don't know enough about the town, you know, and the liability and right of way and all those issues, but if that wasn't an issue, we would have approved this, this would be nothing. I like
Why
that
don't
idea.
you know, because you've got to have 3 votes in favor of any motion. Why don't you just approve the site plan for the additional driveway with the recommendation that the town commission make a determination as to how it wishes to handle the offer of the exfiltration
I
system.
like that program. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
And I'm fine with that. Good.
Would
I
anyone like
make
to
a
make-
motion, if you just give me the correct wording, so the recommend, on condition that we have a recommendation that the town commission
Your recommendation to the town commission is that the site plan for 3250 Polo Drive, requesting approval to add a second driveway entrance, be approved. You heard, these landscaping can be heard separately, right, or is it part of what they've already?
I'd like, no, this is.
You want that separate, Bill, right?
Or you want it
yes.
right now?
Okay, I'll have it separate.
Separate, okay.
So that would be the motion, to approve the site plan for the additional driveway entrance at 3250 Polo Drive would be commentary, that the commentary relating to the exfiltration system be made part of the minutes, and that the town commission make its own determination in regard to how it wishes to handle that. That would be your motion.
Do you want to make that motion?
You can.
Just say so moved.
So moved.
So moved.
Well, I'll say so moved, yeah, that's okay. Okay, second.
So that's.
All right.
Mr. Kent,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Acting Chairman Doctor,
Yes.